Yesterday, when we left off, we had a proof example proving symmetric property of segment congruence. This is 2-5. And we were trying to prove that segment PQ is congruent to segment XY. And when we went through this particular example, we went through the 3 steps of writing a proof. Step 1, what are you given? Write down what's given if it's not already written. Draw a picture if a picture is not drawn. Step 2, you have to write down next what are you being asked to prove. And then step 3, you write down everything you need to remember in order to prove that that's true. Well, yesterday we ended with this particular proof here with on the statements on the left and then the reasons on the right. If you didn't get it, please go back to that lesson and review. But what I want to say today is proofs, in addition to this proof we wrote yesterday, is a 2-column proof. Well, proofs don't always have to be written in 2 columns. They can also be written in paragraph form. And if we write in paragraph form, the statements and the reasons are still both the same. So if we write it as in paragraph form, the above 2-column proof can be written as segment PQ is congruent to segment XY by definition of congruent segments. PQ is equal to XY. By the symmetric property of equality, XY is equal to PQ. Therefore, by the definition of congruent segments, it follows that XY, segment XY, is congruent to PQ. And that's how you could also write this here. So just remember that proofs can be written in 2 columns or in paragraph. And here we'll probably most likely use the 2-column proofs. Let's look at example 2, using congruence. Here's a diagram here with the given information listed. Use the diagram and the given information to complete the missing steps and reasons in the proof. We're going to walk through this second example of how to write a proof. Number 1, or step 1 when writing a proof. Read the problem, find your given. So here's what's given. Given, it says that line segment LK is equal to 5, JK is equal to 5, and segment JK is congruent to segment JL. Remember, no hat. Notice how I don't have a hat on top of this LK or the JK. Remember, that means equal to. I want the actual number. But at the end here, I see that JK and JL both have hats. I'm using congruent. Remember, the hat means they're congruent. I don't need the numerical value. It means same size, same shape. Just a reminder. Moving forward. Now, step 1 in the proof, what's given? LK is equal to 5, JK is equal to 5, segment JK is congruent to JL. Also in step 1 in the given, we read the given and we draw a picture. Well, in this particular problem, what's given is also drawn right here for us. So we don't need to draw a diagram. But what we do need to do is mark the diagram based on what they give us here. And it says LK is equal to 5, so I can come in here and put, okay, LK is 5 units. And it says that JK is also equal to 5, so now I can come over here and write 5 because I know the information is given. And it also says that JK is congruent to segment JL. To show congruence, I'll mark a 1 here and a 1 there like that. Because they both have only just one little mark, that means that they're congruent to one another. Now, that's step 1. Step 2 in writing a proof, remember we have to ask ourselves, what do we need to prove? Well, what do I need to prove? It's down here. Segment LK is congruent to segment JL. Well, if I go back to my diagram that I have drawn, I see that LK is supposed to be congruent to JL. Well, if that's the case, I can mark this over here. They're trying to say that to prove that these two are congruent. I want to say that JK is congruent. I'm just going to put a little circle around that because that's what I'm trying to prove. And I'll even come to the side and write, prove it. Well, if I step back and look at this diagram, what I'm noticing is that I have 1, 2, 3, what's supposed to be congruent segments. And that leads us into step 3 of writing a proof. Step 3 is, what do I know about proving this information? Well, when I look back at the diagram, again I say that after I've drawn it and marked the diagram up, I see it's supposed to be 1, 2, 3 segments that are congruent. And I say to myself, what information proves that 3 segments are congruent? Because basically it looks like JK is equal to LK, which is also equal to JL. And I say, oh my goodness, that sounds like to me that's the transitive property of equality, where I have the first segment is equal to the second is equal to the third, therefore meaning that the first is also equal to the third. So here I have this transitive property of equality, because that's what it sounds like to me. I have to draw the picture or the diagram in this case and analyze that. And there it is. So now I think what I need to do is use this property to prove that LK is congruent to JL. Well, sometimes proofs are filled in for us, and then sometimes they're not. Well, on this particular proof, as I scroll down, I see it's missing 1A, 1B, 4C, and 6D. Well, I'll look and see, what do I need to do? Well, 1A, I see I don't have a statement. Where's my statement for 1A is what I'm asking myself. Well, I see the reason that they want is given. So I go back to the given and I say, which portion of this given information is listed? Well, I like LK is equal to 5. So that's what I would write in here. LK is equal to 5. So here it is down here at the bottom. Statement and reason. 1A is LK equals 5. The reason is it's given. So LK equals 5. Now I look at 2B. What statement can I say? And they're telling me I need to use some information that is given. Well, what other information is given? I also see that JK is equal to 5. Remember, in a proof, you generally start with the given information. And so when I go with the given, I have 2 pieces of given that I can retrieve from the written statement. Now, number 3. In the statements, it says here that LK is equal to JK. And it says that the reason that LK is equal to JK is because of the transitive property of equality. Well, how is that? Okay? If JK is equal to, if if LK is supposed to be equal to 5, and then JK is also equal to 5, okay, so these two, this is equal to 5, and JK is equal to 5. So let me back up. LK is equal to 5, and JK is equal to 5. They're the same length. Therefore, I can say that LK is equal to JK by transitive property of equality, because they're both equal. And then I can come down here and say that LK, segment LK, is congruent to JK. Now remember, this fourth line has the hat. The third line didn't have a hat. And the reason why the third line did not have hats, because I was using the numerical values of 5. I was using the 5 in there, so because I use the 5, I don't use a hat. And I use the equal sign when I don't use a hat. Now remember, when things are equal, they're supposed to also be congruent. So now that I've said that LK is equal to JK, that means they also have to be congruent. So now I can come and rewrite that statement as LK, segment LK is congruent to segment JK. And the reason is why. Why is that? That's the definition of congruent segments. Okay? Definition of congruent segments. That's just me abbreviating it. Remember, again, when segments are equal, they will also be congruent. When I'm saying they're equal, as I did in line 3 here, they have no hat. This hat up here looks like it's a part of it, but that's for underlining B, so that's not there for that. LK equals JK, again equal, because on the previous 2 lines, I was using the numerical value of 5. So when I'm describing them down here, I'm going to use equal to one another because I use the value. Now, remember again, I keep saying it. Equal is the same, equal and congruent will be in relative to one another. So LK is congruent to JK because on the previous one they were equal. And the reason why they're congruent is because definition of congruent segments. When they are equal, segments are equal, they will also be congruent. Now, let's at number 5, excuse me. Segment JK is equal to JL. That information was given to us here. Okay? 6, D. What reason can we say transitive property of equality? Well, what do we know? Now I've linked JK in 5 to JL. Okay, I've just linked JK to JL. Okay, so first things I said was, let me use a different color. I said that LK is 5, JK is 5, and now on this last statement here, or fifth statement, I said that JK is congruent to JL. So JK is congruent to JL. Now that reason means that if JK is congruent to KL and KL is congruent to JL, that's transitive property. So now what do I write here? I put segment LK is going to be congruent to JL, and then using the hat, because of the transitive property of equality. The next definition I need you to know is the definition of a midpoint. It's the point that divides, bisects a segment, and divides, or another word, bisects a segment into two congruent parts, two equal parts. Please make sure you know that definition because you're going to need it for proof writing. Midpoint.